This demonstration is going to cover the wide belt sander. So the wide belt sander is built almost exactly like a planer. It makes your wood a little bit thinner, except instead of using blades, it uses a large sanding belt that's inside the machine. The belt sander here can take up to a 36-inch piece of wood. I mean, that's a large piece of wood, bigger than the top of a desk usually. So it does a really good job of saving us time, and that way you're not stuck hand sanding all those planer marks out. We can take it out with this machine and then just do a final sanding job with an electric that I have. Now the sander does not work, it doesn't do anything. I can't raise, lower the table, I can't do anything until I turn on the air. And the camera doesn't actually show it, but at the top and on the right, there's a red hose coming out of the sander. Follow that to the floor in the back, and there's a red knob. You simply twist it up. So I'm going to quick walk around and do it. Once that's on, and it does hiss the whole time, it tightens the belt, so the two runners that hold the belt on are now pulled apart nice and tight. So through the demonstration, this is going to be hissing. Now I can move it up and down. So here's how you set it. Very similar to the planer. Now, since we can see everything in one shot, here's the directions for how to set it if this doesn't work. And last year it busted, and so we had to set it manually. But here's how you work it. It's very simple. These two are the ones you're going to use most often. That's an up arrow and that's a down arrow. Press and hold the down arrow. And since I'm doing a single thickness board, it's going to be a little less than an inch. So I've got it a little more than an inch now. Right here, this is a compression knob. There's a little switch above it. My board needs to fit between them, like that. Leave it just like that. You know, don't have it hanging out and falling off. And I can let go of it. Now I'm going to raise the table until it stops itself. Press and hold, and eventually it will stop. Now it's not going any further. That's how thick the machine says it is. Right now it is set to 0. It'll barely touch the top of the board. So it'll just barely caress it. So we want to take off a little bit more than that. So you simply tap the up arrow. Tap. Now a common mistake in doing that is someone will press and hold the up arrow for more than a second. And if I do that, I mean, you saw the table go up and then it dropped back down to the right place. If I tap and hold and then let go, now it is raised up probably more than double what I wanted, and it stays there. So I don't want that. I need to make sure to tap it. So I need to reset it. I'm going to put that back in. There we go. And raise it till it stops. Okay. Now tap. And it's preset to raise the table 5/1000ths of an inch. So now what I do, I like to do this, and you don't have to. I like to put some marks on it so I know when that piece has actually been sanded. To turn on the machine, these two green buttons, this one turns on the conveyor belt, and this one turns on the actual sanding belt. Doesn't matter the order you push them in. There's the conveyor belt, and now turn it on. Then send it through. Let go, and it does it itself. Now I would tap the raises, and you can see my marks are gone. Now I would flip it and do it again. When you're done, turn it off by hitting these two red buttons. And you can hear that it's slowing down slowly, and that's what we want. Once it has actually stopped moving, then I can go turn the air back off. Now, here are some things to remember. First of all, this is not an off switch. Now, the problem is on the planer, which we just did, which is right behind me, this is the off switch, so it gets a little confusing. So remember, this is an emergency brake, as is the front. The whole front is an emergency brake. These two are the off switches. If I continue to hit the emergency brake to turn it off, like the brakes in your car, it'll slam onto it and stop it, but the brakes wear out. And since I don't want to replace them if possible, I want to save that brake so it lasts a longer time. Let it coast down. And once it stops, then take the air out. Now, if I hit it and quickly turn the air off, that thing is still spinning around really fast, and now all the tension is gone. The belt starts to flap around in there, and it could rip, it could snap in two, and pieces could get jammed in the machine. So please remember, turn it off, And if all the machines in here are running and you can't hear it, simply put your hand on the machine to feel the vibration of when it stops spinning around, and then walk around and turn off the air. So as you saw, the marks on one side are gone, and then I would do the same thing on the other side. You can continue sanding as much as you need to do it. I mean, if all these marks didn't disappear, I would just tap, raise the table, and do it again. So let's go through the rest of these questions and make sure we get it. I think we're on 3. The direction we put through the sander, of course, is with the grain. Now the thing to remember is sometimes we do have to put boards through sideways. Say I've made a door. The door is made with 2 side pieces and 2 top pieces. No matter how I put it, that thing is going to go through with some pieces that are across the grain. This can handle it okay. It's fine as long as it's 10 inches wide or the door is 10 inches long. It's okay, but it leaves a lot of scratches across the grain that later have to be hand sanded out. There's just no way around it. So to minimize that, always put things through the sander so that most of the wood is going with the grain. That minimizes how much wood you have to then hand sand to get it to look good. So as much as possible, put it through with the grain. Your hands and fingers, like the planer, should not be under the board. Now, this belt is made of a lot of rubber, which grabs the board, which is what we want. We don't want it to shoot back. But the problem is it also grabs onto skin really well also. So if I put it in there, again, like the planer, it slams down nice and hard, but if it traps my fingers, now I'm stuck. Make sure to hit the emergency brake. So there's even a symbol right here. It says, don't do that, getting your fingers under the board. Also right here, the symbol, don't put your fingers here between the board and this red guard right here, because it could pinch. It's a big pinch point that I don't want you to get your hand stuck in. On this machine, the emergency brake, like we already said, in the front and right here. Whichever one you can get to is fine. How many pieces are you allowed to put through at once? I can put multiple pieces through this as well, but while I'm doing that, I mean, I could probably fit 6 or 7 of these at once. But you always need to look at one thing very carefully. This dial right here, even if it goes too high, it means the machine is working too hard and it's too much heat. You'll burn the belt, you'll ruin your board, and I have to replace everything. So this machine, the dial should hover around 25, which is right there, fairly low. It can handle up to around 30, and this is amperage we're talking about here, the power it uses to work the belt. 30 is about maximum, but I want it to stay as close to 25 as possible. That is a good zone. That's where we should have it. I've seen it hit higher than 50 and then up to 75. If you see the dial rise up higher than that, as soon as you can think about it, hit the emergency brake and stop the machine. We'll lower the table, pull it out, and reset. Something got mixed up. This thing has broken before, so if you're noticing it's not setting right, tell me immediately. I can fix it so that it makes your life easier for setting the machine. Setting it manually has a few more steps to it. So given the choice, I'd rather use the compression knob. Now you only need to use this knob for the first pass through only. After that, again, we just tap, tap, tap and run it through, run it through, run it through. Now, if you have a lot of people behind you needing to sand boards, you can set it to what yours is, and if everyone else has the same thickness board, that's great. You can all go through one after another. But a lot of times what happens is we're running things through the planer and one guy planes it twice and the next guy planes it 3 times and the next guy 4 times. So yours is the thickest, the next guy's is thinner, the next guy's is thinner. If that third guy with the thinnest board sets the machine, and then you all run your boards through, the first guy, no problem. The second guy, the guy with the medium thickness board, that dial could go up a little bit higher, but it may, you don't know. But for sure, that last guy with the thickest board, you're going to be burning my belt. That thing is going to raise up too high. So make absolutely sure, if you're just popping your stuff in with the guy in front of you, that you have the same thickness wood to begin with. Otherwise, you will burn up my belt, and it'll ruin, and it shuts this thing off, and I have to fix it. So the signs that you are sanding too much, of course, if this dial goes up, but the most common sign that you actually hear first is the sound. You hear a loud screeching sound that's hard to mistake. It's this machine. So if you hear a really loud screeching sound, hit the emergency brake, and then let's make sure it's set correctly. If you are sanding too much, of course, turn it off. Once in a while, yeah, when you're sanding, let's back up to where we're doing like a door, a square door. I usually put things like that through at a bit of an angle because I don't want, if this is the top of the door and it's coming out and here's my square, I don't want the belt to hit all of this at the same time. And you'll see the dowel kind of jump up a little bit. So I always send it through at a bit of an angle. So now my door is angled like this, and now it eases into the width of that door, or eases into the width of the top, or anything else, or face frame, or whatever. So I will put it through at an angle until it's smooth, and then my very last pass I'll send through square, this way. Send it through straight. So that way, like I said before, it takes all the sanding marks off of the grain going with it, and then I only have to sand the two side pieces. So whenever possible, I put it through at an angle until the very last pass through. And that's my lightest pass. I only have one tap, and it's just barely touching it just to get those marks out. I can't stress enough that this machine saves us hours and hours of sanding time in the shop. So be very nice to it. Never do more than one tap on these bigger pieces of wood that we're going to be cutting for your nightstands. And make sure you don't hit the emergency brake unless it is an emergency. Always let it coast down. And again, I don't care the order. Push one, then the other. It doesn't matter. But this machine will save you hours of time and make your life a lot easier.